Hey, have you missed us?
Hello, my friends. My name is Stevie Cade, and welcome to Film Trigger. All right, so my most anticipated movie of the year, Ghostbusters Afterlife, just released last night. I went and saw it, and if you saw my first reaction, well, I felt a certain way coming out of this movie that is divisive. I've had a night to sleep on it. I had dreams about the freaking movie and my reaction to it, and I had to sit down this morning. I just wrote out all my thoughts, and that's what I'm going to share here in a spoiler-free review. Now, it is to be noted, I am going to talk spoilers about one thing, but I'm going to save that for the very last because it's one thing I did not like about this movie, and I have no choice but to dive into spoiler territory when I do talk about it. But I'll give you guys fair warning when I'm about to bring it up, and yeah, so you'll know when I'm about to talk about it, but there's no way for me to talk about it without giving away a spoiler. But the rest of this review is going to be 100% spoiler free. Since I've had time to come to Jesus with what I witnessed in the theater last night, let's do this. Let's dive into my spoiler free discussion of Ghostbusters Afterlife. I've waited so long for this movie. I did the review series leading up to this movie almost 2 years ago because this movie's been pushed back so many times. Did it meet my expectations? It did. But it also gave me a whole bunch of other things that I just wasn't expecting and didn't know how to absorb at the time. But before we dive into those, let's dive into what I did like about this film. And right out of the gate, the storyline, the who, the what, the where of this movie was phenomenal. It set up a whole new storyline while also paying respect to the original series. The new characters' stories, they seem organic, they're not shoehorned in, and this is a very story-driven movie, which does fall into some issues I have with its pacing, but we'll dive into that a little bit later. But also, along with the storyline, is the plot. The plot of this movie, I thought, was very well done. It's a major throwback to the original 1984 movie, but it's not doing the, we're just going to play the hits sort of thing. No, it does it respectfully, and it adds validity to just how powerful the force they're dealing with in this movie actually is. And it does all of this while also filling in the 32-year gap that we have in between the second movie and this film itself. And with this story is heart. This movie has a huge heart on. Heart on. Heart-on. Heart on. It's got heart and discovery, curiosity, validation, redemption, anger, regret, and forgiveness. And a lot of this heart is based around Egon Spengler. They didn't dance around the death of Harold Ramis. They actually embraced it and used it to drive the heart of this movie. And I'm glad they didn't dance around it because that would have... That just would have been like the elephant in the room. So I'm very happy that they did address it head on, but also just make it entire premise of the film. The cast and characters of this movie are, well, they're pretty well done. And notably, a few here that I'm going to point out for you is McKenna Grace as Phoebe. She's Egon's granddaughter, and man, this girl just hit it out of the park. She carried this entire movie on her shoulders, but did it while completely emulating everything that was Egon Spengler. Like, there's certain parts in this movie where I just thought I was looking at Egon. Like, she just embodied that character so freaking well.
Raise a call.
I'm calling about what happened in New York.
Her grandfather was a Ghostbuster.
Something was coming and he knew it.
Like, even though Harold Ramis couldn't be in this movie, this little girl playing Phoebe really just, she was that character in this movie. She stole the screen. She was one of the most interesting characters in this entire film. Paul Rudd is Mr. Grubison. You can't go wrong with Paul Rudd. You really can't. Like, this dude just, he's so goddamn lovable. But he also has a purpose. He's like the bridge between the kids and the adults in this movie. He's the one kind of communicating between the two, making them, like, as I said, just have a bridge between each other, an open communication. So his character plays very well into the story and plotline. Bill fucking Murray. Okay, Bill Murray. You did not phone this in, and I'm so happy. He was Peter Venkman, 100%. I was really concerned that Bill Murray was going to phone this in. I really was, because, well, he's been known to do that.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true.
He's also been reluctant to do this entire Ghostbusters franchise ever again. but there was a humbleness with his performance. Like, I could tell that he really wanted to do this, and he put it in there. He did it. He delivered. All the original cast that came back, they all did great, but Bill Murray was noticeably vibrant in his performance. The ghosts. Okay, this is a Ghostbusters movie, right? So you gotta have ghosts. You gotta have good ghosts. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, or teal, or whatever color that muncher thing was.
I think we opened the gates of hell.
Yes, we get a new character called the Muncher. He is an obvious replacement for Slimer, so, which you may or may not see. No spoilers here. But it was great to be introduced to some new type of ghost, as well as some older ones that we're familiar with. But on top of that, visually talking, these were done so well. Yes, CGI was used when CGI needed to be used, but they also used practical effects in the best appropriate times. They didn't just lean too heavy on CGI, which is good because we live in a climate where movies just love to use CGI for everything because it's easier, it's cheaper, it's less work, we don't have to deal with puppeteers. No, they use practical effects when necessary, and I personally really enjoyed that aspect of this. Anytime a movie can use practical effects, use it. CGI is a tool, not a go-to. The ghosts were fun, they were well done, but their effectiveness in the movie, it leads me to what I'm on the fence about when it comes to this film. I ain't afraid of no ghost. Well, that's because they weren't scary. they weren't a real threat in this movie. Well, at least to anyone else besides the main characters. And that's kind of the thing I felt was missing with these ghosts. In the previous films, when the ghosts escaped into the cities, it was a huge thing. People were running in the streets, screaming their heads off. Ghosts are just picking up babies and moving carriages and doing whatever. This film didn't have really that aspect. The ghosts weren't a real presence in the town. It was kind of, but not just, again, it wasn't prominent enough. It didn't hit home to where this town was living in fear because of these ghosts. No, there was no real citywide danger or an antagonist, actually. No antagonist whatsoever, to be honest with you. There was an overall looming danger that was, approaching in the movie, but no pushback from anybody. There was no roadblocks for these characters, no real roadblocks for these characters. Nothing the team had to come together and overcome before dealing with the looming doom that was, approaching. This, I believe, affected the movie's pacing in a negative way. Instead of these kids overcoming true adversities, it's just a slow burn of curiosity and discovery, which is okay, that's fun, but you need pushback for these characters, and it just did not have that. The pacing was slow, but also at the same time, very rushed, and that's a very weird aspect for me. It's a very weird thing to wrap my head around. We spent so much time unfolding the plot that when it came to the actual characters absorbing the information they were getting, that was just glossed right over. The movie rushed through any sort of disbelief or skepticism that these characters probably should have had. Because there is a slight skepticism at the beginning of the movie with one of the main characters, but when that skepticism is met with the reality of the situation, it's just, okay, cool, well, I accept that. There's no questioning the situation. It's just, oh, that's a ghost? Okay, cool, ghost exists. They don't have time to absorb the information and actually process it. They just accept it and move on. The movie didn't leave room for organic reactions to the discoveries they have. And this bleeds right into the rushing of potential relationships that blossom in this movie. It's just not earned. It's not nurtured in any sort of way. It's just there. Oh, here's a possible relationship because reasons. I feel we definitely should have spent more time nurturing not only the characters, but these relationships, their development, and their growth. And this goes for the original cast that shows up in this movie as well. And that's not a spoiler. They show them in the trailer, so don't tell me that's a spoiler.
Hey, have you missed us?
Yes, we got to see the Ghostbusters suit up again for probably the last time, maybe, I don't know. Mum's the word about that, but we'll dive into that a little bit later. Which was awesome, but not great. I feel there was a huge missed opportunity here to have the original cast and characters be interwoven into the plot of this movie. Because this movie is, as I said before, very story driven, which can make it seem long and drawn out in certain parts. I feel that the original cast could have came back and really honed in on some of the plot devices in this movie. And if you would have wove that in through the storyline, that would have made this a less story driven, but more like story and plot balanced movie. But instead, I don't want to get spoiler here, but instead we just get poor and lazy exposition to explain things that could have been organically explained throughout the movie, but it just happened all at once, and it was just like, bleh, okay, there's reasons. That's why this is happening. It was such a missed opportunity, in my opinion. But when they did show up, it was pretty fucking badass. So that's why I'm on the fence about it. I will give the movie that. They definitely gave me what I wanted. Moving right along with what I don't like about this movie. Again, no spoilers yet. We're getting close to the spoiler, but not yet. There are 2 post-credit scenes. Well, 1 mid-credit scene and 1 post-credit scene. And without giving away any information, I will say that the last post-credit screen really confused me of where this franchise is going. It made me realize that the characters that I just spent 2 hours with, I have no clue actually where they're going forward with them. I don't know if they are going forward with them. What happened in the post-credit scene just kind of threw a wrench into everything I just watched. It took this little nugget of a story and just left it here and then said, okay, well, we're going to leave that here and possibly do other things over here. I don't know. It was very confusing. Almost seemed like a last-minute idea, which is why it would be a post-credit scene. I don't know. It left some good potential opportunity of where this franchise could go, but it kind of just swept under the rug everything I just watched. So, like, I don't... didn't like it. Didn't like it because they didn't explain it well enough. It seemed very rushed and forced in there. If they do make another movie, I have no clue who is going to be a part of that or why. And I shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't have this huge question mark of the future of this franchise. It should seamlessly tell me that, okay, this is where we're headed now. These are the characters we introduced, and this is where we're going to take them. No, it doesn't do that. It shows us these characters, and then it says, okay, but forget that. We also have this going on, so we'll just, here you go. This is where we're headed. I don't know about these other guys. Fuck those guys. Okay, with that being said, warning. This is one thing that I have to talk spoilers on. So if you don't want spoilers, press pause, go to this timestamp right here. That will be my grade where I will no longer talk about spoilers. But from here until that time, it's going to be spoiler because I have no other way of describing what I didn't like about this certain aspect of the movie without talking spoilers. And I don't want to do a whole other video just so I can talk spoilers. I think my review covers everything pretty well. They ghost dad Egon. When Harold Ramis passed, I jokingly, I forget who I was talking to, maybe my son, I jokingly said, oh my God, well, they can always have him come back as a ghost. And like, we kind of looked at each other and said, that's ridiculous. They wouldn't do that. That's so low-hanging fruit, right? They fucking did it. And they didn't just do it. It wasn't just like a quick cameo, like, oh, there he is, tip of the hat, bon voyage, dear friend. No, it was like, he's here. Everyone gets to say their goodbyes. Yes, I could see that being a very heartfelt moment. And it was. Like, when he showed up on screen, I got a little tear. I really did. It was a very emotional part. But then he just kind of hung around. And, like, was giving high fives and drinking tea and shit. Not really. He didn't go that far. But the point is, like, it was such a magical moment that just lingered. And I almost put this what I was on the fence about, because even though they totally ghosted at him and put him in this movie, he looked fucking good. Like, it was like incredible. You would think that Harold Ramis himself actually shot this footage. It looked fucking incredible. But I just can't get over that they did that. It's one thing that, again, I joked about years ago, going, no way, they wouldn't do that. That's so disrespectful. But they did it. And it wasn't as disrespectful as I thought it would be, but I was still like, why are they doing this? Why? Again, even if I backtrack a little bit, as I said, when he first shows up, is helping Phoebe take out, Gozer or whatever, that was magical. And they could have shot that in a way to where you knew it was him, but you didn't quite see him. They could have done that, and that still would have had the same impact. But they didn't. They showed him, okay. But as I said, when he kept hanging around, he just stood around with everybody. Okay, all right. Who's in line next? Say your goodbyes. Who's in line next? Say your goodbyes. Who's in line next? Say your goodbyes. It makes sense that he would show up because it's a Ghostbuster movie and he's a ghost. Okay. Again, just the longevity of how long he was there hanging about with these other characters, it just did not sit well with me. With that being said, spoilers over. No more spoilers. I got that out of my system. Overall, I had to have a real coming to Jesus moment with this movie. And that was between the time that I left the theater and this morning when I just wrote down all my thoughts of this movie. My expectations were really up here, as they should have been. This movie met every expectation that I had, but it filled in a whole bunch of storyline that got me from expectation to expectation, which is fine. My biggest issue with this movie is that it was story driven when I feel this movie could have been better as a 50-50 story plot driven film. And again, bringing back the original cast to weave them in to drive that plot, to me would have been a more balanced movie. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Balanced. This movie wasn't very balanced for me. There was a whole bunch of awesome, sweet, and then discovery, awesome, neat, discovery. It was a bit exhausting, and also, if you look at my first reaction review with my son, who my son does not have Ghostbusters nostalgia embedded into his DNA like I do. He's a 17-year-old kid, and he's like, the movie was boring. So, like, that's an interesting aspect to have. It's an interesting aspect to see. Like, will this movie connect with future generations of moviegoers? I don't know that it will. But where I sit with this movie is a lot higher than where it was when I left the theater last night. As I said, I've had a real, like, I had to calm my tits and just really think about how good this movie actually was and why I had problems with it that I had. I just had to figure all that out. So I actually, last night, if you would have asked me, I would have given this movie a D+ or a C-. Now that I've had time to think about it, I'm going to give this movie an actual C+ or B-. I can't choose. So I'm just going to go C+, B- on this, and that's my grading.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good, though.
It could have been a lot better.
There you have it, guys. I think this movie is going to be very divisive. I think people are going to love it, or they're going to hate it, or you're going to have assholes like me that love it and then hate it and then like find out the reasons why. In the comments below, let me know where you stand with this movie. Right now, a lot of the things I'm seeing are very positive, but I'm also seeing quite a few negatives as well. And where do you think this movie is going to lead into the future? Please, in the comments, keep it spoiler-free. I know I did a spoiler, but I give you all the warnings. I will have a spoiler discussion probably sometime next week where we can really open up about everything that we watched with this movie. With that being said, I appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to check out some more of my videos. And as always, stay trigger happy, my friends. Peace.
There hasn't been a ghost sighting in 30 years.